Hey there, my wedding planning friends, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for clicking on my video. I'm Emily Summer. I'm a wedding planner based in Montana, and I make weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice. So today's video, we are breaking down wedding planning as simply as possible. This is for all of you that are maybe a little bit overwhelmed with all of the tasks and just the planning in general when it comes to planning a wedding. And while there's a lot of resources out there and checklists and timelines to follow when it comes to planning your wedding, I understand that some people just want it a little bit more cut and dry, as simplified as possible. So this is hopefully a way to break it down in a simpler process. So if you're somebody that is very overwhelmed with all of the tasks that accompany wedding planning and you don't want to be planning a wedding for the entirety of the year or however long of a lead up time you have to your wedding date, this video is for you. Hopefully we'll break it down nice and simple for you and take a little bit of the overwhelm away from wedding planning. So today we're breaking down wedding planning in just 5 steps. Step number 1 is the pre-plan step. So you just got engaged, allow yourself some time to enjoy that, soak into that, tell all of your loved ones, and not feel the need to immediately jump into booking vendors and planning things right off the bat. Once you've had a little bit of that grace period, the pre-planning step is what will come next. And what I mean by pre-planning is you're not making any decisions, you're not booking any vendors, you're not signing any contracts. This is where you will first prioritize with your partner, sit down and discuss what is important to you about your wedding day. Is it having as many people there as are in your lives, a large guest count, a large wedding? Is it having a very simple and small wedding? Is it making sure that there's great food at your wedding? Whatever those priorities are, make sure that you are discussing that with your partner and coming up with some kind of idea for how you both visualize your wedding day. Visualizing is the next task in this pre-planning step, so making sure that you are kind of on the same page of how you envision your wedding day and what you visualize as far as the overall feel and vibe and location and all of those little things that go into your wedding day. This is also the step where you will budget. You want to make sure that you are setting a clear budget and a categorized budget before you move on to any further steps or any actual booking or solidifying any vendors for your wedding. Step number 2 is gather information. Again, we are not even booking anything yet. This is where you're going to move from that visualization into your research phase. So starting to look up vendors in your area or the area that you plan to get married, researching venues, what guest count they can hold, what the capacity is, what the location is like, what the surrounding areas are like as far as lodging and accommodations, and doing all of that pre-booking research. So maybe this involves asking friends and family that have gotten married recently who they recommend, making sure that you're looking at reviews for said vendors, and creating your mood boards, your inspiration, your Pinterest boards, and bringing in all of that outside inspiration, and really just gathering all the information you can in this step. This is also where you want to create your guest list, as the amount of guests you have will greatly impact a lot of decisions you make moving forward when it comes to planning your wedding. Step number 3, you have done your pre-planning, you have gathered your information. Step 3 is where you actually start booking things and making decisions. So step 3 is where you book your heavy hitters. So you will go back to your priorities that you discussed with your partners, and whatever directly relates to those priorities is where you want to make sure you're booking those vendors. So your high priority vendors are what's going to be booked in step 3. And typically this will start with your venue. That is going to be probably your highest priority, as these are the ones that book out the furthest in advance and are going to, again, make all of the decisions moving forward. It's going to likely determine your wedding date, which without a wedding date, you can't really book any other wedding vendors. So venue will likely come first, and then any of those other high priority vendors, whether that's your caterer, your DJ, your florist, your photographer, whoever that is, those most important vendors to you, this is going to happen in step 3. This is also where your wedding dress shopping should occur. So whether that is just starting to shop for your wedding dress or shopping for your wedding dress and purchasing your wedding dress, this should all be happening in step 3. So this is also where you will want to send your save the dates to your guests once you have secured that venue and that date, to make sure that you're giving them ample time to plan for your wedding date accordingly. So between step 3 and step 4, you can take a little bit of a break, a little breather if you need some space from the wedding planning, especially if a lot of your vendors were booked in that step 3, because step 4 then is to book your mid-range vendors. So this is basically booking anybody that's left over. If if you haven't solidified your desserts, your cake, your baker, maybe your hair and makeup, whoever hasn't been booked from step 3, this is where this should be happening. And you don't want to be waiting too long for these, even though they aren't your top priority vendors. You still want to be completing everything in this step within at least 4 to 6 months from your wedding date. This is also where rehearsal dinner planning should take place, whether that is your responsibility or a family member is helping. Make sure that these details are getting figured out and getting planned. And also where your bridal party attire should be finalized. You want to make sure that you both as a couple have your attire finalized, whether that is making sure that your wedding dress is ordered, a suit or tux ordered, as well as your full bridal party attire. So make sure those bridesmaids dresses are ordered, the groomsmen's suits are ordered, whatever attire is going to be taking place on your wedding day, that should be secured and finalized during this step. You also want to make sure any lodging that is necessary for your guests has been secured or at least reserved so that your guests can go in and reserve a room within a room block that you have already established. And finally, step number 5 is just finalizing details. This is where all of the small things are going to come into play. At this point, you should have all of your vendors booked. This is the step in which you're going to confirm all those details with your vendors, going to send out your invitations, going to update your wedding website if you have one to any pertinent information you need to relay to your guests. This will include any transportation information if you are providing shuttles to and from your wedding. This is where those schedules and pickups and drop-off information will be listed, making sure that any other information you need to relay to guests is solidified and clearly expressed to your guests on your wedding website. This is also when you want to finalize any rental, floral, or anything else pertaining to decor invoices, making sure that all of your decor pieces, all of your details are going to be finalized during this point. If you are doing any DIY projects, this is when those should be completed. So make sure that you are not leaving any DIY stuff to the very end. Ideally, you want to have all DIY projects done with at least 2 weeks to go before your wedding so that you're not cramming in any last minute things. This is also where creating a day of timeline will come into play, as well as your seating chart. If you were having assigned seatings at your wedding, this is when this should be completed and finalized. And like I said, confirming all details with vendors, sending that day of timeline to vendors that need it, sending that seating chart to vendors that need it, and making sure everyone is on the same page and you have everything that you need. Planning a wedding can be very overwhelming. There is a lot that goes into it and it can sometimes feel like another full-time job. While there are a lot of resources out there and checklists and timelines to follow when it comes to what you should be booking and when in the wedding planning process, there are a lot of people that are just in the business of getting it done. You're not wanting to plan a wedding throughout the entire course of your engagement, throughout the entire year, or maybe even longer leading up to your wedding date. So hopefully this video helped break it down and simplify wedding planning a little bit for you and make it a little less daunting and scary. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe to get weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice, and we'll see you next week.